Cracking party people, it's your girl Nicole Banister, aka NIKKI BANZ, coming to you live back home in Cape Town, South Africa. Today is Tuesday, so you already know the vibes. This is NIKKI BANZ live. Oh yes, what's good everybody? What an absolute treat to see you all here tuning in on the live. It is such a vibe to be here with you all. I am back in Cape Town after 3 weeks of jet setting across North America. I was in Mexico, in Holbox, this beautiful island Holbox off the coast of Mexico. I was in La La Land, kicking it at my original home, you know, my OG home, not the new home, Cape Town, the original home. All right, and then I was in Oakland getting hyphy in the A, bay. Now I'm back in Cape Town. So it is just good. It's good to be back. It's good to have my little setting, you know, my banana tree here, my postcards, you know, just my little setup. It's nice to be back. But for any of y'all that saw the episode I filmed in Holbox, you have to agree that those little palm trees floating in the background, that was pretty dope. Can't lie. All right, shout out to everybody who's hopping on the live right now. I see our guest of the hour is already in the building. What's up, Yusuf? I'm about to bring you on real quick. I'll bring you on just in a moment. So good to have you here. I see some other former guests. Rachel Fox in the building. Shout out Rachel. Hello, goddess. She was my guest on the show a couple weeks ago. Okay, we got Ubuntu Evo in the building. One of South Africa's black-owned olive oil companies. Shout out to Ubuntu Evo. Go cop some of that olive oil. You know, we always trying to support local businesses, black-owned businesses, all the good things. We got all sorts of folks in the building. Hello, we got my mom here. Hi, Mom. Hi. I love it. So you already know the vibes. This is NIKKI BANZ Live. I do this every single Tuesday. I go live with all sorts of movers and shakers from across the globe. Every single week, it's a new guest from a different country. It's an hour-long exclusive interview where we're talking about the successes, the challenges, the highlights, the ups and the downs of some of your favorite journalists, content creators, activists, dancers, rappers, singers, interesting folks from across the globe. There is no other show like it where you're getting like one-on-one, intense, exclusive interviews with people who are really making an impact on the world. And today's guest is one of those folks. I oftentimes talk about the difference between being an influencer and an impactor. Okay, shout out to my homegirl Rue who gave me this idea, who gave me this terminology. There's a lot of people who have a lot of followers on Instagram or on social media and they're influencers, right? They have a big presence, but they're not really like doing much with it in terms of the impact that they're having on the world. Our guest today, Yusuf Omar, is truly an impactor. This is somebody who is disrupting traditional media outlets. This is somebody who has made his entire career, his entire life, dedicated to telling real stories, raw stories, honest stories from people whose voices are not being heard by traditional media outlets or by the global north or by whoever controls the media narrative. And that's why I am so excited to have Yusuf on the show today. This is going to be so dope. I immediately connected with him in Dubai, but I'll tell y'all all that in just a minute when I bring him on live. So let me stop talking because I already know I want to dedicate every single second of this hour to this man because he has such great energy and such a compelling and impactful story. So let's get it started. Yusuf Omar, the guest of the day here on NIKKI BANZ Live. Tune in. I'm going to give y'all a little drum roll. You know I love my little sound effects. You know how I do. And I'm going to bring him on, all right? Let me get my drum roll going. All right, party people, here we go.
Yo! I'm obsessed with your energy. You are one of the most energetic people I had the pleasure to meet in Dubai, and you're exactly the same on your social feeds as you are in real life. There's no, you're looking at the real thing.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Thank you. I was actually so excited to have you on the show because I was like, if there's anyone in the whole entire world who can match this NIKKI BANZ energy, it's you.
I'm really, really excited to chat to you about storytelling. I hope we can provide a lot of value to your community and you know, give them an opportunity to build their own media brands.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So this is going to be so exciting. Thank you so much, Yusuf, for coming on NIKKI BANZ Live. And I always like to start every episode by telling people, everyone who's here on the live or everyone who's watching the rerun on YouTube, how I know the guests on my show. So the two of us met in Dubai. We met at the Nas Summit, and it was actually so funny because when we met, we met early on in the conference, and you were like, oh, I'm from South Africa, and I was like, okay, cool. So we're just like connecting, vibing. I had no idea that you were a speaker. And then, you hop up on stage the next day or the following day and give this incredible presentation about the work you're doing. And I was like, oh, for sure. I was like, I'm glad I already have the in before everybody else saw him speak, because you blew it away. I mean, absolutely killed it in Dubai. So I hope you're able to share some of that story here with us today. So thank you.
I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. And I'm sure your audience are wondering why I'm wearing sunglasses. Maybe I struggle to see, but no, that's not the case. I will explain all. All will be revealed.
Yes, all will be revealed very, very soon. Very soon. So let's start off with sort of giving a little bit of info on your background in terms of sort of like where you're coming from in the world, because you have such a dynamic background. You've lived in a lot of places, grew up in different places, and I think it's nice to sort of root you in like where you came from, so we can get a better sense of where you're going. So talk to us a little bit about your background, where you lived, where you grew up.
Yeah, definitely. I've had a really blessed and privileged life. I was born in the UK, in London. I was raised in Australia. I moved there when I was 14 years old. When I was 21, I moved to South Africa, and I thought I was going to be there for just a year to study journalism, but I ended up sticking around for like 5 years. As you know, South Africa is one of those places that will just kind of claw into you. It'll get you. So I spent 5 years there. Got married there. Moved to India for 1 year, and then was nomadic, living in the cloud, both virtually and physically, for a number of years, traveling the world as a foreign correspondent and as a startup founder. Now I'm back on the road. We're in the UK today, and I'll be in Kazakhstan next week.
Wow. Absolutely incredible. I love that background, that diversity of places. And I think, you living and growing up in all these different places really speaks to the global perspective that you share today in your stories, in your shows, right? Because it's like when you, it is a blessing, it is a privilege to be able to live in different countries, to be able to immerse yourself in different thought processes and backgrounds and cultures and religions. And that really shows in the type of global narrative that you display. So talk to us about how you got into storytelling and journalism. Where did that come from? Like, did you watch something on the news one day and you were like, that's gonna be me? Like, how did that come about?
I didn't grow up with any aspirations to be a journalist, and I think a lot of young people are under so much pressure watching this right now to find out what their passion is or what they're gonna be when they get old. And sometimes just leave it to faith to work itself out, try lots of things, and sometimes something will stick. For me, I had done an undergraduate in marketing and management, and I finished I finished my last semester in California in the US. As I said, we got a lot in common, me and you. I ended up going to New York, Times Square, and I'm in Times Square looking at all the big billboards, and there's this dude standing up, on a billboard, like this image of this man in like a pair of underpants. And in that moment, I realized I didn't want to do marketing anymore. I was like, shit, I just finished a degree, and I'm basically going to try and sell people underpants. I'm not discrediting marketing. There's some amazing marketing efforts out there, but that wasn't what I wanted to do with my storytelling. So went back to the drawing board, applied for all kinds of things. Yeah, so I went back to the drawing board, applied for all kinds of things, and ended up getting a scholarship to do journalism in South Africa. So flew out there, and holy shit, I fell in love with it. Like, it was everything. The ability to talk to people for a living, the ability to travel the world, to create positive change. It was a really, really powerful experience.
Well, it's such a funny story that you saw an ad, like a marketing ad, and that's what dissuaded you from marketing. That's like literally that's the opposite of what marketing is meant to do. But we're all much more grateful for it that you didn't go down that path. Okay, so you ended up in SA. Talk to us about your time in the Rainbow Nation, because a lot of people, you know, coming in from my side of things are coming in from South Africa or South African fans, followers. I'm here in Cape Town right now. So talk to us a little bit more about your work. You were working with ENCA. Where were you? What were you doing?
Yeah, well, start. What a place to be a journalist. I don't think there's an easier country in the world to be a journalist, because there's just so much happening. There's protests and inequality and economic issues and crime and innovations and inspiration and fashion and food and mountains. Like, there's stories everywhere in South Africa. Like, literally, I would just be like, stories would be falling out of my pocket. I'd be like, oh shit, I dropped a story. Oh, there's another story. There's just like stories every. You want a story? Here's a story. I got tons. You can have some of my stories. I got more stories up there. You know, there's just stories everywhere. So really easy place to be a journalist, and to kind of dig your teeth into lots of stories. But I, in particular, wanted to be a foreign correspondent. Actually, I wanted to tell stories of wars and natural disasters and travel around the world. And I started pitching this. I started asking all these newsroom bosses, hey, can I be your African correspondent? I want to see Africa with my own two eyes. Because I didn't believe the narratives that I'd read, that, you know, it's all scary and dark. I wanted to see it for myself. And everyone said no. They were like, no budget. We don't really need another correspondent. So in 2010, I basically gave the industry a middle finger, and I started hitchhiking, just catching rides on the side of the road. And I caught rides from South Africa all the way to Syria, from Durban to Damascus, telling stories up the east coast of Africa. And I went up, 12 different countries with only $2,000, so really limited budget. And that's where I really started to dig into understanding how to be a one-person storyteller, right? A creator like you are, like your audience are. How to shoot and edit and take photos and videos and write a blog post. And that skill set was so valuable, because now we're moving to a time where you don't necessarily just want to be a writer, or just want to be a photographer, or just a podcaster. You want to have a holistic set of skills. And that's that kind of skill set I was kind of building along that journey.
Absolutely. And this journey that you took, I mean, South Africa to Syria, that's no small feat. What were some of the types of stories? What were some of the types of narratives that you were finding along this epic cross-continental, journey that you were on?
So the first thing I learned was that outside of South Africa was probably the most dangerous country I'd been to in Africa. The rest of the continent was incredibly safe and warm and welcoming, and people left their doors open at night. That's the first thing I learned. The second thing is, when you're traveling solo, you are so unintimidating that people just welcome you into their homes, right? They meet you on a bus or a train, and they just want to have you over. So the kindness of strangers came through over and over again. And 3, innovations, right? Like, today, Africa is home to 7 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world. And I was already starting to see that action in place. I was able to pay for a taxi ride using my mobile phone in Kenya before I could do it in New York City. So I was like, wow, this is a continent that is leapfrogging ahead. It's like, I met people who had never had internet on a laptop with ADSL or even dial-up. Their first internet was on a mobile phone, and they went from no internet to like 2G or 3G or 4G. So I think the lessons I learned on that trip were, 1, Africa is full of solutions. 2, it's certainly not the image that people think it is. And 3, it kind of skips generations. It goes from like no banking to everybody on mobile banking, or from no banking to everyone on blockchain. It just kind of go boom, boom, boom.
Boom. Yes, it is absolutely that leapfrogging that you mentioned. And it's so funny, because I remember when I first moved to South Africa, I was using like cell phone banking, and people were like, oh, so you're using an app on your phone. I was like, no, it's not an app. Like, you just dial like *130# and all of a sudden my bank is there, and all of a sudden I can transfer money, right? Or like M-Pesa in Kenya, and people were trying to understand, and my friends in the United States or in Europe, they're like, we don't get it. I was like, I know I don't get it either, but it's like, it seems very advanced.
100%. And And I also, I mean, across the continent, but especially in South Africa, that notion of make a plan is what is so beautiful. Like, you know, I'm traveling at the moment in the UK, and so many times you get somewhere, and like yesterday, I wanted to play like tennis on the beach, and the place closed at 2, and I got there at like 1:50, and they were like, you know, I thought I'd use my charm, and they were like, nope, this place closes at 2. But I'm so used to like South Africa and other parts of Africa where they're just like, you know what, like, we're chill, make a plan, like, we'll make it work.
Right. It's all good. We'll make it work. We'll make a plan.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, you talked earlier about how South Africa just like sucks you in. And I think it's been that same thing for me because of the creativity. And that's not just a South African thing. That's something that, you know, is happens all across the continent. It's the creativity of folks like, okay, the government won't find a job for us. We'll start our own job. I'll start my own business. I'll start my own company. I'll become a fashion designer. I'll become a content creator. You know,
and on that point, some of the ideas that we've seen across Africa are wild. I mean, we did a story in Cape Town about a group of young people at UCT, University of Cape Town, that are making bricks to build houses out of human urine, out of piss, right? At room temperature. So you don't have to put them in the oven. You don't have to heat them up to 200 degrees. You don't have to create more CO2 emissions out of So I found myself with these kids going around all these urinals collecting people's human urine. And by the way, if you should know, it takes 200 people's urine to make a brick, but there's a lot of urine in the world. We met another woman who was in Tanzania. We went out to see her, and we shot the story, and she was training rats how to sniff out landmines. So you think rats and you're like, ooh, gross. These rats were sniffing out landmines. We met another woman out in Kenya. And as you know, across the African continent, hair weaves are a really big deal, right? Often you see women that are wearing hair wigs. But those wigs are often made out of plastic, especially the cheaper ones. And they only last like 3 or 4 weeks. And then you end up with mountains and mountains of plastic waste. So I met this woman in Kenya who was making hair wigs out of plants. So you could literally wear a wig for 3 or 4 weeks, and then you could feed it to your cow. And it's just like more and more and more beautiful stories that are emerging across the continent. And then we've had the privilege to meet these amazing people.
Yes. So let's pivot that, because you're telling us all these incredible stories, and I want to share with the people who are here on the live, or the people who are watching the rerun on YouTube, you know, how you are actually sharing these stories now. And so maybe we'll pivot. Maybe we'll talk about the glasses now. Maybe we'll talk about your shows that you have. So talk to us a little bit about your mojo, your mobile journalism, your citizen journalism, and how you're really disrupting traditional gatekeepers of media by telling first-person stories directly from people, from smartphones, and from those epic glasses you have on.
So I think the big question for me is, as storytellers, as creators, is how do we create a more empathetic and understanding world, right? We need to be understanding to climate change and some of the big challenges that are happening right now. And we need to be way more empathetic, right? Imagine if the world was more empathetic around the abortion story that's taking place in the US right now, or if we were more empathetic to what's happening in Ukraine right now. If we all had a little bit more empathy and a little bit more understanding of each other's perspectives, the world would probably be a much, much better place, right? So let's start with that point. I worked in traditional media. I worked at CNN International. I worked all over the place. And I found traditional media really struggled with this idea. And they struggled with it because, one, they critically lack diversity, right? I could be in a newsroom with 200 people and I might be the only one that identifies as Muslim, or even worse, the amount of people that identify, you know, that are black or gay or whatever it might be. So one, there's a lack of diversity. So how can you create an empathetic and understanding journalism or storytelling publication if you don't have any diversity? You can't be empathetic because you don't understand.
Exactly.
And that's one, a massive lack of diversity in the media landscape. And two, a crazy obsession with negativity. Like 400 people have to die before it's a story. And the story about the brick made of human urine, that's not interesting. So these two things, lack of diversity, obsession with negativity. What's the solution? We thought, okay, let's deal with the diversity first. What if we train people how to tell their own stories, and we curate that into shows, And we focus those shows on constructive and solutions-based storytelling. That's it. So simple. Train people to tell stories about how they're creating positive change in their communities. So that's what we did. We traveled to almost 100 countries around the world. We trained up 20,000 people how to tell stories with their phones, and we started curating it into shows. And then we realized, hey, Yusuf Omar and Samaya Omar, we couldn't fly around the world all the time and train communities. It wasn't scalable. So we started developing tools, camera tools, which you could open, like selfie lenses. You know, you get selfie lenses like the flower crown and the doggy tongue and all that good stuff. We started developing those tools, and I'll just put one on just to show your audience. This is one that we created for Eid. But how do we use AR tools to help people tell stories so that they could talk about Eid or they could talk about whatever? So jump forward to today, and we currently have 10 shows on Snapchat. We have 5 million subscribers. We've generated, I think, over 1 billion views last year. And that system is so simple. Train communities with tools like this, how to tell their own stories, and create amazing shows.
And the shows truly are amazing. You're watching stories from real people who are sharing intimate details about their lives. They're sharing the untold stories. It's the narratives that you don't normally hear, exactly for the reasons that you said, lack of diversity and focus on negativity, right? And one of the stories in particular that really touched me, something that was sort of, you know, earlier on in your show career, was when you shared, and you shared this at the Nas Summit, you shared this in your other, you know, talks and interviews before, you shared these stories from women who are survivors of rape in India and covered their faces with filters so that they were actually able to publicly speak about this harrowing and traumatic incidents in a climate where they weren't really allowed to say anything otherwise due to stigma or shame. So talk to us a little bit about that, because I mean, this is you know, it's one thing, stories come in all different shapes or forms or styles, right? But like, these are, when we think about like the actual stories that nobody else in the world is telling, you are telling them, and that's one of them.
I appreciate it, Nikki. So I think a lot of these social media apps have got incredibly powerful tools and technologies if you're able to look at them for that and look past the gimmicks and all the playfulness and say, hey, wow, how can I actually use Instagram stories to tell something powerful? How can I use TikTok to tell something powerful? And I'm personally obsessed with augmented reality. I think it's both the ability to really immerse people in a story and also a toolkit to help people tell stories. And in this instance, yes, we're working with rape survivors in India. In India, you're not allowed to show the identities of rape survivors in the media, even if they want to be identified. And traditionally, you'd blur out their faces, or you'd have silhouettes, or any kind of other way to hide their identities. But at this time, we thought, okay, maybe we can use these selfie lenses, hide their identities, but still see the impressions on their faces, still see their eyes, still see their mouths, still see, you know, that those kinds of human connections which make you connect to somebody in a really meaningful way. So kind of that's how we approached it.
And I think that's incredible, because what you're doing is you're breaking down the stigma around social media. Because, you know, we think about the our generation, maybe millennials, Gen Z, we're all hip, right? We're here for social media. We use it every day. It's integrated into our daily lives. You know, but there's this gap between, again, the traditional gatekeepers of media, between older generations. There's this gap of folks, people who say, no, you can't use social media as a form of storytelling, right? Like, you know, it's not, selfie journalism is not storytelling. This is something that you said before. How do you bridge that gap from the haters, right? How do you bridge that gap from people who just haven't grown up in this sort of tech world, in the social media selfie world? How do you bridge that gap and explain what you're doing to them and why there is so much value?
Yeah, I mean, I think on some level, you don't have to justify yourself to others. Like, we spent so long trying to convince the industry that what we were doing had value, when actually they are not the people that we're trying to impress or get validation from anyway. The audience is who we need to get validation from. So when we went around the world and we started talking about our idea around, you know, training communities to tell stories, and we started getting pushback from traditional media who were like, oh, what you're doing is not real, it's not good. It didn't kind of make us feel disheartened. It gave us even more motivation that, wow, these people don't get it. They don't get it. So I think it's the same for any of your viewers. You know, you're often going to be faced with a boss or somebody who's going to not understand your innovations and your great ideas. And at some level, you've got to ask yourself, okay, am I going to keep trying to fix this old company that maybe I'm working at or trying to impress? Or am I going to build a new one? And I think more and more young people today are taking that second choice. They're saying, hey, if the old establishment's not working for me, I'm not going to waste my time fighting those battles. I'm going to create my own one right here.
Exactly, exactly. And that's clearly it's working. You have 5 million subscribers, like you said, over 1 billion views last year, 10 different shows. So there is an audience for these stories. There's literal millions of people, billions of people who want this kind of content. But I think, Yusuf, like what you're talking about right now, kind of saying, you know what, the traditional gatekeepers, we're not here for it. We're going to start our own thing. I think that's much easier said than done. So what, for you personally, where does that drive, where does that sort of that ability to just seamlessly kind of disrupt come from? Because I think, you know, those of us out there trying to do similar things, we want to know, we want to follow in the footsteps. So how do you do it? Where does that come from? What's the motivation?
Yeah, I mean, I think one, you have to acknowledge a position of privilege, right? Like, it's really difficult for anyone to get into the media space, let alone start their own channels, if they are having to look after their parents and grandparents. You know, in South Africa, they have what's known as the snowball effect, where you're looking after generations around you, black tax. I've
Yes.
never had to deal with black tax. I've never had to deal with having to look after anyone other than myself. So that's already a huge position of privilege. Above and beyond that, if you're looking to try and, you know, disrupt the media landscape, you need to find sources of revenue that are going to keep you above water until the content starts paying the bills. We produced 220 videos on Facebook before we even saw 1 cent of revenue, before we had anything go viral. So how did we do that? We focused our energy in on our revenue on training, on speeches, on consulting, on that kind of stuff. So you got to kind of line up your ducks where you're like, okay, this year I'm going to earn money from consulting, still making content. Next year I'm going to be training brands, still making content. Following year, I'm going to be doing, you know, keynote presentations and earning money there. And by year 3, my content's going to start making money. So you kind of need to create a bit of a runway for yourself so that you can take off.
Yes, yes. All right, that's the breakdown. I hope all y'all here on the live or watching this on YouTube, y'all better be taking notes. We're getting tips from the expert here on how to make this happen and how it's possible. And that was actually a question that somebody had dropped in the chat. And I'll just share it quickly now for everybody who's watching here on IG Live. Any questions you have for Yusuf, I will happily ask them to him. So on the bottom of the screen there, you've got the little thought bubble with the question mark in it. Click on that, type your questions in there. The last 10, 15 minutes of the show, I will absolutely ask all of your questions to Yusuf. Once I'm done asking all of my questions, since I just have so many. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the breakdown, the trajectory. And I think a lot of folks who are getting into content creation or getting into storytelling, they have all these questions. I'm looking now at the glasses. Yes. So talk to us about the glasses. You haven't broke down exactly what you're doing with the glasses here, but I do like.
Yeah, for sure.
I have to say, I do like when you take them off because then we're matching. Our bindis are matching.
Oh yeah, the audience should know that we are actually twinning.
We are.
That's one of our first talking points. So right now, when you think about the majority of content creation and consumption, it's on a mobile phone, right? We're currently conversing on a mobile phone. The biggest trend that we're going to see over the next 8 years is that the predominant computer that you're going to use is going to be on your face. You're going to be consuming content. You're going to be looking up at the sky and seeing the weather. You're going to be looking at the bus and seeing what time it arrives. You're going to see your friend Nikki at an event and you're going to recognize her name and her latest videos, and you're going to have talking points. That's happening, and that's a good thing. I really believe like looking from this on your mobile to looking back out of the world is amazing, and I think we're going to be able to create immersive experiences where you get to experience the world through somebody else's perspective. All amazing, amazing, amazing. So what I'm wearing right now is Spectacles by Snapchat, and it allows me to capture video, but what's more important is it allows me to see augmented experiences. You can see a little screen in there. with my lenses. And we've created some crazy augmented reality experiences, Nikki. Just to give you a perspective, in Cape Town, I'd encourage you to go actually. There is a Louis Botha statue outside of Parliament, right? This the first Prime Minister of South Africa. And as you know, statues in South Africa and around the world are an incredibly controversial thing, right? People want to knock down statues. They often represent men that were racist, that were colonizers, that killed native populations. So we thought, okay, what can we do with the statue? So we created this effect where you can, you know, with your glasses or your phone, you can look at it and it comes to life. A ghost comes out of the statue, and it's actually a ghost of the horse and Louis. And the horse, and Louis like, oh, I'm an amazing person. I did so many things for South Africa. And the horse is like, nah, man, you're a racist. And is basically contesting and having a banter with him. It's so cool.
And the horse, that's the accent the horse has, because that's on
That's
point.
it's a yeah, that was my effort at a Cape Townian accent.
Yeah. You're straight like Afrikaans accent right there. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, I think that's really cool. Thank you for breaking that down and for sharing. Because people were like, what's with the glasses? What's going on there? And even when I met you in Dubai, you had the glasses on. And you were like, yeah, we're going to take a little video. I was like, okay, here we go. And I think, you know, for people trying to integrate this more and more into our daily lives and getting an understanding or a sense of how, you know, glasses like this can actually help shift and enhance your perspective on what you're seeing, right? Because that was the big controversy with cell phones, right? Oh no, okay, no, we have cell phones now. No one's going to be connected anymore. Okay, now we're wearing video glasses, spectacles on our face. No one's going to be connected anymore. But what you're doing is curating experiences with the glasses, with tech, to actually help us go deeper and dive deeper into, you know, what's not being shared on the surface, which is really incredible.
And just on that point, like if you are, you know, considering getting into the creative space, try and look for that meaningful content. Try and look for that conscious content. There's so much frivolous stuff. There's so much, you know, there's no shortage of makeup tutorials. We don't need another one. There's no shortage of prank videos. We don't need any more prank videos. Like, find your niche, but try and find it in a way that's at the intersection of content creation and social good. And I think you'll find a really captivated audience there.
Absolutely. And I think that's exactly what I'm trying to do here with this show, right? Like, and I love that you were sharing earlier about how, you know, you made 220 videos before you had any, you know, money coming in whatsoever. For me, I do this show every single week, bring different people on, totally pro bono, like no sponsors, no funders, no nothing, because I'm like,
it's hard
these
work.
Are people who, yes, it's hard work, and people who have compelling stories to share. Like, you know, we've got you coming on with your diverse background. We had an activist from Papua New Guinea come on the show. You know, we have Nas Daily himself come on the show. So it's like people with all these diverse backgrounds and experiences that you just don't see every day, right? How do you highlight and uplift the stories of diverse people doing interesting and dynamic things across the globe? And I get, the way that I'm seeing it is that social media is the only platform that has that kind of conscious content and the diversity that you mentioned previously.
100%. Sometimes it's so hard to find. It's buried below all of the frivolous shit that, you know,
right.
But if you go out and find it, it's there. And to be honest, it's highly shareable. Like, our generation is so sick of negativity. We've had terrorism and fear-mongering piped into our phones from the day we were born. We are craving answers to problems in the world.
Yes, completely. So one of the ways that we're getting those answers is through all these epic shows. So talk to us a little bit more about #OurStories and all the different Our Story. Like, there's, you know, there's Our Health, there's Our Survivors, there's all these different sort of branches of it. So talk to us a little bit more about this dynamic set of shows that you have on Snapchat.
Yeah, well, keep watching our social platforms, because this time tomorrow, by tomorrow, we'll have renamed the entire company. So we're really, really excited about that. It's a huge deal after 4 years. And you're hearing it here first on Nikki's podcast. And yeah, our shows are broadly speaking about people creating positive change. And we're really trying to build the world's biggest human experience library. We think so many people have such incredible lived experiences, and if they can package those and share them with the world, we can educate each other. So we've got shows, for example, generally covering our audience of 13 to 24-year-olds, predominantly women. So stories that impact young people. We've got a show on mental health, which looks at minds, but in a very constructive way. We've got a physical health show. We've got a survivor show, which looks at everything from gun violence survivors to sexual assault survivors. We've got a show specifically for India. Just this week, we launched an African show, which is looking at like the Africa you haven't seen on TV.
Yes.
We've got a sex education show, which is a fascinating look at, again, the sex ed that you should have been given in school but didn't. We've got a show called Most Asked, where you get to ask often marginalized communities the real questions that you've been Googling about them, to give a better understanding of some of these groups. We've got a show based in India, which looks at the people that are making India a better place. We've got an entrepreneurship show, which looks at all these young people that are creating amazing business opportunities and in the same time doing good by their communities. So yeah, a whole bunch of different shows, but broadly celebrating diversity and amplifying disruptors.
We love it. I'm giving you snaps. I'm giving you claps. Let me give you my little DJ horn.
Wow.
I love it. I love it. And like, it is so easy. I think what's really interesting, Yusuf, is like for you, it is so easy for you to just like rattle these things off and make them seem like so normal and so everyday, because like sharing these types of stories should be so normal. It should be like, this should be the norm, but it's truly not. So I just have to go ahead and give you your props, because the types of stories that you're creating, the narratives that you're disrupting about the African continent, about India, about sex education, which is something that's also very close to my heart, right? It's like, these are not your average everyday stories that people are hearing. So holding space and having platforms for them, and then for audiences to engage on Snapchat, on Instagram, wherever they're finding this content, I think is really, really powerful. So, I mean, let me just make sure I tell you that what you're doing is awesome, and please keep it up.
I appreciate it. We're also huge fans of your work. And I mean, what you spoke about just a moment ago about creating these videos without any monetary incentive and all the work that goes into that, that's what it takes. At the end of the day, everybody wants to be a creator right now. If you ask the average 16-year-old, what do you want to do? I want to be a YouTuber. I want to be a TikToker. It's the ones that are a combination of incredibly hardworking, like you are right now, and incredibly focused on doing one thing really well. I think at that intersection, you're finding that young creators are succeeding.
Hardworking and focused. For all those of y'all taking notes right now, there you go. There's more notes for you right there. So talk to us, Yusuf. You're in the UK right now. What do you have going on in the UK? What's new? What's exciting there?
Yeah. So, I mean, a big part of what we do is speeches and conferences and just sharing this with the world, right? We can't do it on our own. We need to amplify these ideas. So tomorrow we're speaking at Mojo Fest, which is a big mobile journalism conference. It's going to be where we're going to be announcing our new name change, which we're really excited about. And from here, we head to Kazakhstan. I've been to, it's an amazing and really misunderstood country, frankly. I'm going to be training communities there, working with people in a whole bunch of towns. From there, we head to Denmark, where we're going to be doing the same, working with training communities in Denmark. So yeah, it's interesting to see that, COVID is subsiding in many parts of the world. The world is back open again for business. And it's a great opportunity. I go back to this idea that creators need to find alternative revenue streams beyond just the content. And as the world opens up, the conferences are opening up, the speaking opportunities are opening up. Get your name out there, do the first couple speeches for free. Build a show reel of you speaking. And eventually you'll find it's a really great ticket to get you to travel around the world and get paid to do so.
Yes. That's the dream right there. And that's what I think what many folks who are tuned in right now are looking at doing. And when you pick these countries, Denmark, Kazakhstan, is that because there are opportunities there? Are people reaching out to you? How do you pick the places where you go next, particularly when you're training, new people too? How do you pick those places?
We piggyback like Robin Hood. We find somebody who is paying for a speech, and we use that as an opportunity to then go over there and train communities. And to be honest, Nikki, my co-founder and I, we traveled to like almost 100 countries around the world over the last 3 years. well, 4 years. We didn't pay for flights. We didn't pay for hotels. We didn't pay for anything. There's a really interesting opportunity to your audience in terms of, and how do you do that? How do you get on that speaking reel? Is this,
Yeah, how do you do that, Yusuf? How do you do that?
You need just one good speech on stage. It can be a big stage, it can be a small stage, it can be a community hall. It doesn't matter. And you need to capture that on video. And if you capture a video of yourself giving a prolific speech at an event, and you can share that with event organizers, that's your ticket. It doesn't, it's that simple. And I think even more broadly across, like, not just speeches, but like even really early in my career, when I was working in newspapers, I was constantly cutting out my bylines, cutting out my articles, sticking them in a book. Have evidence of your skills, right? If you say you're good at video, show people that you're good at video. Have your videos ready to play. If you say you're a good writer, have your show reel ready to go. Same thing with speeches. If you say, hey, I want to travel around the world and get paid to do so and give speeches at conferences, great. Do just one at your local hall, wherever. Film it and have it ready to go so you can show it. You need to show some form of evidence to these prospective clients so that they can consider you for these opportunities.
Exactly. And that's such powerful advice. And it's so funny because my background initially was in diplomacy and international development. I spent the first decade of my career as a Peace Corps volunteer in the United States, as a United Nations fellow. I gave a speech at the UN headquarters. I did all these things, and none of that was on camera. None of that was recorded, right? And so then when I pivoted to entertainment and was like, no, I want to be a host. I want to be an MC. I want to be an entertainer. I want to interview people. Everybody was like, okay, so what can you do? What have you done? And I was like, I have no content. I was like, I don't have anything recorded.
Yeah. It happens to so many people.
Now.
Like you. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even with that, like even just gathering those photos from that time and those moments, you could create something so cool about that stage in your life,
Yeah, that's true. I need to like tap into a team that can do great videos, who can like make a sizzle reel for me, because I'm like, for me, I'm like, I just want to talk to amazing people and have great conversations and epic dialogue. I'm like, I'm not the video producer. I'm the talent, I just want to be on camera. Someone else needs to do the behind the camera.
You're right though. Everybody in the world needs a sizzle. It needs a good sizzle to say, this is who I am in 1 minute.
Exactly. Oh, I love it. Okay, Yusuf. So before I get to questions from the audience here, we've got about 4 or 5 questions from folks who have asked. Maybe I'll just ask you, you dropped a couple things for us, in terms of what's coming up next. The big name change that's coming up. Congratulations. We're so excited for that. The trip to Kazakhstan. So talk to us, just tell us, for those of us who are your friends, your fans, your followers, what can we do to keep supporting you, keep supporting your platforms, and to continue to be very thoughtful and conscious about the content that we're creating?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I think for us, it's not about like a passive audience that are simply consuming content. We would love to see more and more our community become our creators. If you have a powerful story to tell, and everybody has a powerful story to tell, you've all had a lived human experience, whether you've gone through a divorce or a medical condition or a mental health issue or a breakup, you've experienced something. Even your own personal journey, Nikki. I mean, that's a really interesting story that you've been on. We want to hear that story. So get in touch with us and we will provide you with the tools and the guidance to create professional quality videos. I mean, what you said is exactly what we do. You said, hey, I am not a filmmaker. I'm just like to be on camera. Somebody else needs to take care of the rest. That's what we do at no cost. We take care of the rest. We help package amazing videos. So if you want to get involved, find us on social and pitch a story and pitch your story. Not even something in your community. Tell us about you and we'll help amplify you.
Love it. So make sure you go and follow Yusuf. If you go to the top of the screen here, click on that little down arrow in the middle of the screen. Make sure you're following Yusuf Omar SA on Instagram. And of course, follow me too at They Call Me Banz. Gotta share the love. So we're going to continue to support. We're going to continue to engage. We're going to make sure that everybody here thinks of their dynamic story and can send it to you. And then, you know, you can share more and more stories from around the world. So with that, I want to make sure I throw it over to some of the folks here in the chat who are asking some really interesting questions. If that's okay with you, about like 10
Let's do
minutes
it.
left.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's do it. Okay, so this is a question from a fellow citizen journalist. He was also at the summit in Dubai, works for Nas Academy, is an amazing content creator, also a guest on my show. His name is Sai Setu, On the Ground with Sai. So Sai is asking, the stories that you film demand a range of your personal emotions. How do you detach yourself?
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of Sai and his work in India. He's doing some really cool stuff. So if you haven't, make sure you follow him and check out some of the work he's doing. I don't think you need to. I think historically, journalists and storytellers were taught to be this like fly on the wall and completely objective. Never take a side, no matter what the story is. I'm okay taking sides on many stories. We're on the side of hashtag Black Lives Matter. We're on the side of Me Too. We're on the side of fighting climate change. Sometimes I am deeply affected by a story that we're doing. And I think people are increasingly looking for that human connection, that relatability to the presenter or somebody that's hosting that piece of content. I think sometimes we're trained to be like, very like, hello, I'm Yusuf coming to you from this location. It's like very formal. Whereas, like, I'm trying to be more human and more emotional with the stories that we tell. So, yeah, I think responding to that question is don't detach your emotions from the story. Lean into it.
Lean all the way in. And I love that you highlighted that, Yusuf, because one of the things that I find is that when I'm interviewing someone and they end up getting emotional, for example, you know, maybe they start crying or whatever, that to me is actually like the utmost like form of flattery, because I've created a safe enough space for this person to feel comfortable enough to actually just share and be raw and honest. And I think like, and I'll start crying too. If you start crying, I'm definitely gonna start crying, right? Because it's that human connection. It's the rawness, the honesty, which you're totally right. Traditionally, it's been so detached, but it's like, but that's not real life. That's not humanity. We are attached. We are connected. All of our energy is all here, all together. So I love that you shared that.
For sure.
Okay. Another question, also from Sai. So he's talking about, he has a question around these different speaking platforms. Is there a specific forum that you go to find speaking platforms? You know, do you kind of just do your own research?
Yeah, no, a lot of folks use, you know, speaking bureaus or like these organizations that will help you find speeches and events. And I'm sure they're great. They do take a big percentage of the salary, the money that you make from that speech. To be honest, we've never had to do that. All of the speeches that we've had are inbound. Again, I just emphasize this idea. Create one good video of you speaking on any platform. Get it up on your LinkedIn's, on your Facebooks, especially LinkedIn is a good one for this. Target it. Target it to the right people that need to see it. Slide into DMs. Hey, Amanda, I know you're hosting the storytelling innovation session in Denmark in 3 months' time. You need to feature me. I need to be your keynote. This is why. Here's an example of me speaking at an event. That speaking person is too happy to hear from you because they're so tired of having the same panelists, the same speakers year in, year out. They're looking for somebody different, somebody disruptive. But I'll tell you one thing, when you do those speeches, make sure you say, make sure whatever you are talking about is firstly true, but it's surprising. I often find the biggest issue with people that try to do public speaking is that they're too afraid to give away information. They want to get paid consulting fees to give away information. So what they end up doing is this really like washed down, low value speech where you're like, what did I really get out of that? What did I learn? Like, give people at least 3 key ideas that they can take home, and those 3 ideas must make them say, wow. Like, if I go into a social media speech and I'm like, hey, you need to focus on engagement. Yeah, you need to focus on engagement. But what does that even mean? Like, how do I go back to my office and be like, hey guys, focus on engagement? Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't do anything for anyone. So really, really think about, if you are getting into the speaking space, what value are you offering? What are the really big take homes? What are the 3 things when somebody watches your speech and they're going to go back to the office? What are those 3 things that they're going to say? Like, know those 3 things. And those 3 things better be high value.
Well, I can already think off the top of my head of the 3 things that I thought about after your speech in Dubai. One of them was that Snapchat pays the most per million views. That was one of the things I remember you saying. And I was like, oh, I never knew that.
Right. That's the thing, right? It's a TIL moment. Today I learned. You need that. You need to go home with like, I didn't know that this morning. Now I do.
Literally. And there was obviously a ton of other things I took from your speech, but that was one thing that I was like, oh, who knew? Oh, love it. Okay, last question I'm going to ask you from the audience is from another amazing content creator, also part of the Nas Academy family. Her name is Dana Today, based in Dubai. Awesome content creator and video maker. She's asking, just wondering, what do these glasses and this way of storytelling, how did they change the filmmaking medium?
Oh, it changes everything because, well, on so many levels. One, filmmaking traditionally has been about the camera pointing in at a subject, right? So I'm the subject and the camera's pointing at me. Now, we do shows with our wearable cameras, and we've got a few ones called first person. The camera is pointing back out at the world. So the perspective is completely inverted from here to here. So now you're not seeing somebody's life, you're seeing their point of view. And I think if we all need to see each other's point of view a little bit more, if I saw your perspective on the world, I might understand you better. I might be like, oh, okay, I see why she thinks that way because I've lived a day in her life. So I think that's one. 2, from television to YouTube and Facebook, yeah, the formats have changed and all that, but the content consumption is much the same. You're still watching a video, right? You're like, oh yeah, this is a good video. This is totally different. When you have a screen on your face that is reacting to the world around you, that is bringing statues to life and is making things happen, you are no longer watching a story, you're now part of the story. So there's 2 things here. There's the capture process, which is shooting, and now we're shooting out of the world, not back in. And then there's, apart from the capture side, there's the consumption side. And the consumption side is way more interactive than ever before.
Wow. And it's so interesting because I think that's intuitive. Like when you see it, when you're wearing the glasses, or when you see a video from the glasses, you understand that. You're like, oh, I'm looking out, right? But then for you to actually say it and break it down, it's like, oh, absolutely. That's actually not the type of content that we see every day, right? It's not like that. So you're so, yeah, it's spot on. And I love what you said, Yusuf, about just shifting your perspective and getting a better sense of what someone's everyday, day to day, what their perspective is, what their lived reality is. Because you're totally right. For us to build a more inclusive, a more tolerant, a more peaceful, and a society where people are actually, unabashedly supporting one another and all their diversity and all the different things they bring to the table, religion, race, sexuality, skin tone, food, whatever it is, we have to be able to see through their eyes. And that's exactly what those glasses are doing and what your stories are doing. So thank you for bringing that to the world.
Exactly. I appreciate it.
Yes. So with that being said, Yusuf, you are a conscious content creator. You are a business owner. You are a citizen journalist, a mobile journalist, all of these wonderful things that you do. I'm so blessed to have had you on NIKKI BANZ Live today. Any final words for the people watching?
Find your mojo, your mobile journalism. You are seen.
You are indeed. Thank you, Yusuf. This has been such a vibe. Call me when you're in Cape Town. I would love to hang out.
I'll see you soon.
I'll see you very soon. Thank you. Have a beautiful night. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to NIKKI BANZ Live. Bye, everybody. We'll catch you soon. And make sure that you follow me on Instagram @TheyCallMeBands. See you next